When the book came in this beat up, at first I was wondering if the publisher like had a beef with me, but then I realized after reading it, clearly this just came through the void, and there was some turbulence. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about Voideverse by Damien Ober. This was an art copy the publisher did send me, and I didn't quite get to it in time, but I filmed the short kind of joking around about the condition it came in because it was super beat up when it arrived here, but especially being a book that does involve traveling through the void and kind of the experience that can be, I actually found it kind of funny after all. But I was really curious on this one, and I had to limit the number of review copies that I take anymore because I've just remained forever in backlog, and I, for the most part, stopped accepting them this year. This one, though, really had caught my attention because it seemed very interesting. Although I have to say, while I really enjoyed this book, the blurb that this is given is Lord of the Rings meets Mad Max, and that is just so silly to me. And I've seen a lot of really silly blurbs where people are like, this means this, or all the other ones, but at no point did anything in here even remotely remind me of either of those things. You could, I guess, maybe make the argument for Mad Max, but it still doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's just so I don't know. That one felt so out of left field that that's the description. So if you find that and you find yourself not curious, it's not really like that. And hey, if you were curious about because of that and check it out, that's still okay too. But this is really interesting, and it's a sci-fi that focuses a lot on the world building and the sort of the ideas around what's being set up here, because this is in the Voidverse and we're in a void, and there are all of these different rocks that are floating in the void that different people live on. And on these different rocks, they all have different codes, and so they have different bits of culture or resources that are available. And there are some people who travel between, and either they're rising or they're sinking. And there's all kinds of different legends and mythos that different people on these different rocks have as well. So that's kind of what's starting is with this interesting world and the idea around legends and how those can change, and the impact that can have on different groups of people. And you get to see that kind of throughout here as well. If anything, if I'm doing a comparison, this reminded me a little bit of some stuff that I've read from Kirsten Hall from, I think it's the Mcalis cycle, except that's like more like levels of hell versus different rocks in a void, but just sort of the each one being kind of different, having its own rules. It reminded me a little bit of that, but in kind of a different writing style. This is very quick reading, I will say. This was a really easy to get through, although it's at points a little bit slower. And it's actually one of the things too that got me really curious is when I looked this one up and I saw some other early reviews, and most of the people who were saying negative things were saying like, oh, this was kind of slow and spent too much time world building. And if you know me, you know there's not much that gets me to pick up a book faster than somebody complaining that it's slow and focuses too much on the world building, because that is my bread and butter. And those ended up being the elements that I really liked the most, the world building. It was really cool to see, and all of the different kinds of legends that people have. You have some people who are trying to get to the top, get to the bottom. You have some people who fear that there's some great thing that's coming from the bottom. They have the different theories on what the void is or what's going to be happening in the void. And different people have reacted in really different ways. We see some rocks that have these really rigid legends and mythos that are really important. And we have the sort of like, antagonist here as well, also has their own mythos and legends that they're following as well. And we get to see different characters from very different I want to say walks of life, but rocks of life feels more appropriate in the specific circumstances. But we see some different characters and get to see some different points of view as well. And I think overall it works pretty well. This is, I will say, very much not a character focused story. The characters in some ways feel a little bit flat, partially I think because it feels somewhat intentional, because we're more so focusing on the surroundings and what's happening versus digging really deep into the characters. Like there's one of the main characters, you don't actually know what their real name is for the vast majority of the book, because they just kind of are the role that they are. But it is more so the focus on the world and the ideas that are being explored that we get. And I think for that kind of book, it accomplishes what it's trying to do really well. Now, the things, my couple of critiques is The first character that you follow, I found to be the most compelling, and you get very little of them in the book. And the characters that you do follow, I think, work really well. But it's just the very first character you're introduced to, who is a very small part in the book overall, I felt was the most compelling. They had the most compelling story, and I do understand why the book was formatted the way that it was to not really follow them and follow some different characters. I think you could have very easily weaved their journey in through the story in a little bit of a different way, and tried to, like, still keep a pulse on that character, just because the beginning actually really pulled me in, and then I still really enjoyed myself through, but I just kept thinking, like, come on, I want to see more of this character as well. And so that was one thing that I definitely would have liked to be a little bit different. And then the other thing I have to mention, because I feel like I just see a variation on the trope of showing up somewhere and having to deal with bureaucracy. And this one is, again, I know I've commented about this. I ended up reading two different fantasy books that did it, and it's the, like, oh, you're here, you just have to wait an indeterminate amount of time. Something I've seen. This wasn't quite that, but it was like, oh, we got to go through all the different level approvals. Like, you're definitely not going to be approved and that kind of thing. And there's a scene here, and it's just one of those things that I feel like it's just been so done to death that I personally am a little bit tired of seeing scenes like that, where we're just kind of going through it, because it's not like, I mean, it can be done for humor and things like that too, but it's just like that particular scene, I was just like, come on, I've seen this before. But mostly, especially, I feel like that stands out because mostly this is really unique in a lot of different ways. And while it might remind me of some things, Lord of the Rings and Mad Max not among them, it just really is doing lots of different cool stuff. And there are some pieces as well that you can see that might seem familiar to some things, including one of the big things, which I can't really say what it reminded me of, but I'll say the construct reminded me of a certain something from an 80s cartoon movie. It's the vaguest way I can say it, and I feel like if you've read it, you'll know what I mean. If you've also seen the movie I'm talking about, but a little bit. But it's doing a lot of really different things, and so I think for such a unique book too, to just have that one scene that just felt like so done and just tired, it stood out quite a lot. The other thing I will say, though, is this is the type of book where you're not really getting a ton of answers. There's a lot left up to interpretation. And again, I think partially that's part of the way the book is written. It doesn't necessarily present you with this is right and this is wrong. It's more, this is what these people think, this is what these people think. And you just sort of are going on figuring it out. So if you're somebody who likes really, really clear answers, this isn't really that. This has more of that. Just, again, it's called the Voideverse, and a lot of it, there's scenes where people are just going through the void, because you can just be traveling through the void for long periods of time, trying to get from one rock to another in the nothingness. And so that sort of feel of just kind of being out in the darkness, in going towards something, but you don't necessarily know where you're going toward, and just some of that, I think some of that feel comes through with it left a little bit mysterious and a little bit clouded in some ways. And I think there is going to be more in this, I assume. And so I'm assuming we'll find out some more answers eventually. It's not like quite to the level of like Jeff Vandermeer, where it's like completely opaque, but it's still a lot is left up to interpretation. And I think it, again, works pretty well here. And just the general ideas, getting through this, and it was, I guess this is actually a pretty short book, and it was very quick reading overall. It took me longer than I'd like, just because I haven't had a lot of time to read, but I think it accomplishes really well. So something I really liked, something very different. If you're looking for just sort of a cool, odd, unique exploration of this interesting world, looking at the ideas, legends as well. With again, the characters aren't like bad or anything. They aren't the most depth of character, but just exploring these different areas within the void and these different ideas. I had a really good time doing it, so this is one I would recommend checking out if you are interested by any of the stuff that I have talked about here. Really, though, those are my thoughts on Voideverse by Damien Ober. It is out now, so you can check it out. Yeah, really. Oh, I'm holding it upside down. I'm just, it was just going through the void a different direction. Again, everything has a reason. So, um, But those are my thoughts on Voidverse by Damien Ober. Let me know if you've ended up checking this out. I know it was getting some buzz, so other people were checking it out. So it's very possible that you may have read it by the time this is coming out, even though this is pretty shortly after. I didn't quite make it before release, but pretty shortly after. But definitely let me know your thoughts. Otherwise, make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.